Hello, everybody, and welcome to Penguins to Go, your daily dose of Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from. Well, the Pittsburgh Penguins have finally joined the party and started making their PTO signings for the 2023 season, adding forward Austin Wagner this morning, as well as two defensemen in Libor Hayak and Mark Pysyk. So I wanted to come on here, talk a little bit about them because they are PTOs, professional tryouts, which means they don't officially have a contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins for the entirety of the season, but you can expect them in late September to join the Pittsburgh Penguins in Cranberry for training camp and be able to potentially earn a spot on the roster or even a contract to go and start the season in the AHL. I want to talk about Wagner first, just simply because I think of the three, probably has the least amount of opportunity to make the NHL roster out of training camp. He's played in 178 NHL games to this point in his season. Most of those games were played with the LA Kings. 42 points in those games, 23 of them being goals, splitting last season between the Ontario Reign of the American Hockey League and the Chicago Blackhawks, who he played 7 games for at the end of last season. Wagner comes into the Pittsburgh Penguins organization hoping to get a spot in the battle for the Penguins' bottom 6 at training camp. And like I said, just right out of the gate about Wagner, I would say that he's probably on the outside looking in to start. He's probably behind guys like Drew O'Connor, like Alex Nylander, like Matt Nieto, like Rem Pitlick. I would assume he's also probably on a similar level as a guy like Valtteri Puustinen, who, while I like him, doesn't seem like he's going to get the greatest opportunity of getting a spot directly out of training camp. So it'll be intriguing to see who the Penguins play him with when it comes to training camp. Obviously, they usually split into several teams, and they split the teams up into usually a couple of lines from the NHL team, a couple lines from the AHL team, some prospect lines. So it'll be intriguing to see who the Penguins decide to put Austin Wagner with and if he can earn a spot in the AHL to start the season. I'm more personally intrigued by the defensive additions. Let's start with Libor Hayak. Gets a change of scenery because he's only 25 years old, 6'2", 209 pounds, and he spent his entire career up to this point in the New York Rangers organization, playing 110 NHL games since making his debut back in 2018. What I think kind of hurts Hayak at this point is he's a left-shot defenseman. It does give the Pittsburgh Penguins a much bigger-bodied option on the left side, which is good because when you look at the Penguins, after you get out of their top 4, it's a lot of undersized defensemen that they're going to be counting on. And when you talk about the biggest issue with the Penguins, which was keeping their goaltender clean and keeping the front of the net, cleared out, guys like Ty Smith, Mark Friedman, P.O. Joseph, that's not their strong suit. So bringing in a guy like Libor Hayak gives you somebody who at least can clear out the net front. Now, POJ is the same height, but he's also 20 pounds lighter, according to Hockey Reference, than Libor Hayak. So again, much bigger body. Friedman, Ty Smith, Will Butcher, who's also in that competition for the third spot on the left side. Not to say that he has a great opportunity, but he's going to be there nonetheless. But all three of those last three guys that I mentioned, all under 6 foot tall. So yes, Hayak clearly is the biggest body among that competition there. But I don't see him seriously pushing the top 2, being Pierre-Olivier Joseph and Ty Smith, for a roster spot to start the season. But that's what camp's for, right? I mean, he's only 25 years old. His underlying numbers have not been great up to this point. But again, change of scenery, change of organization. The Penguins might like what they see in him, might give an opportunity to kind of marinate a little bit more in the AHL. And with the Pittsburgh Penguins, you never know. You might get an opportunity. Look at last year, Taylor Fedun, I don't think expected to get any NHL playing time, let alone a handful of games. So if Hayak is able to come in and impress, he might earn himself a minor league contract. Now here's the guy that I think has the greatest opportunity, and really the only person I'm taking seriously when it comes to getting an opportunity to make the Pittsburgh Penguins roster straight out of camp. And that's Mark Pysyk. He's looking to bounce back at 31 years old, missed the entirety of last season with an Achilles injury. Horrible story. Signs with, I believe it was the Detroit Red Wings. Literally about a week or two later, has an Achilles injury and then suffers a setback in January, which wiped out the entirety of last season. Achilles injuries are tough to come back from. I mean, ask Erik Karlsson. That is a long road back from an Achilles injury, and it certainly doesn't help that it happened when he was already at the age of 30. But 521 NHL games, he has plenty of experience, over 10 seasons, not including the one last year where he missed. I would give him the best shot still. You know, you never know how somebody's going to react getting back out on the ice, playing the game at that speed, if they're going to be able to really get back to the level that they were at before. But if you look at the level that Mark Pysyk was at before his injury, he's a really solid defensive defenseman. Has a half-decent finishing ability from the back end. Not that the Pittsburgh Penguins need more of that with Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson leading the way. But it's a nice little feather in the cap and a nice little tool in the tool belt for Mark Pysyk that goes to him more so than it goes to, I don't know, maybe his primary competition on the right side, which is going to be Chad Ruhwedel. That's where this gets very intriguing if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins heading into camp. We already knew there is going to be copious amounts of roster battles entering camp, more so than there has been over the past 5, 6, maybe even 7 seasons, when you consider the entire bottom pairing is kind of up for grabs. Whether it's P.O. Joseph on the left side, who's probably the leader in the clubhouse, and Chad Ruhwedel on the right side, who's probably the leader in the clubhouse there, but you have Ty Smith, who can play both sides. You have Mark Friedman that can play both sides. Just mentioned, Libor Hayak joins the left side competition. Will Butcher is on the left side competition. I'm sure Taylor Fadoon, again, outside chance. He's really just an AHL guy that, you know, break glass in case of emergency, but he's going to be there at camp hoping to climb up the organizational depth chart and make sure guys like Mark Pysyk don't jump him in line. I would say Pysyk is above most of these guys. I would still give Chad Ruhwedel the edge heading into camp simply because he's been with the organization, he's shown what he has, and Mike Sullivan, listen, you put in the time, you put in the effort, and you're able to be a guy like Chad Ruhwedel has been for Mike Sullivan for the last couple of seasons, where you can sit out for a long time, come in, do the work, and still be good when you're called upon. That's going to give you some brownie points whenever it comes to something like this. Now, do I think Chad Ruhwedel is miles ahead of anyone behind him? No, he's not. And a lot of that has to do with last season. He did not have a great year last year. And that might be why you see a guy like Kyle Dubas bringing in Mark Pysyk, because you want to make sure that if Chad Ruhwedel is the guy, he's not just the guy because everybody else vacated. You want him to be the guy because he outperformed somebody. And yes, I think in general, Chad Ruhwedel is a better defenseman than Mark Friedman. I think you can see that even at best for both of them, Chad Ruhwedel is clearly the better of the two. That line gets blurred a little bit when you bring in a guy like Mark Pysyk, right? He has great underlying numbers, like I mentioned before he had that Achilles injury last season. He's a solid defensive defenseman. We've talked about the Pittsburgh Penguins defense. It's Marcus Pettersson, Ryan Graves, and then a lot of guys that you're really going to need to make sure they're defensively responsible. It helps when you have a bottom six that has a lot of guys that can play in their own zone well and can transition well, but you'd like to have somebody on that third pairing, like a Jan Rutta, where, yes, last season, Jan Rutta didn't meet expectations, and his salary cap number was far above what he was playing at. You bring in a guy like Mark Pysyk, probably if you sign him, it ends up being a league minimum contract, and if he plays similar to how Jan Rutta played when he was healthy last season, that's a win for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it's gonna be, again, more intriguing because there's more factors, more players that have more opportunity than we've seen in years past at Pittsburgh Penguins training camp. Do I think that Mark Pysyk is going to be some great contributor to the Pittsburgh Penguins this season? No, I don't think that this is the sign that you look back on in March or April and say, wow, they got a lot out of Mark Pysyk. But I think you look at it as another solid move that gets the Penguins going in the right direction. It is a low-risk, potential decent reward situation. It's not going to be a guy that's going to be an all-star. It's not going to be a guy that's going to change the course of the postseason if the Pittsburgh Penguins get back there. But it's a guy that pushes Chad Ruhwedel, makes him have to win and earn the job more so than a guy like Mark Friedman. And listen, I like Mark Friedman because I know there's a lot of people that love Mark Friedman. He brings that antagonistic style that the Penguins still don't have enough of. And he's also a solid defenseman, for that matter. But to think that he would actually be able to win a training camp contest against Chad Ruhwedel seems like a little bit of an exaggeration, right? Because Ruhwedel, I think, is so far ahead in Mike Sullivan's eyes that Friedman is going to have to really outperform Chad Ruhwedel to get that opportunity. Mark Pysyk comes in with a year off, which might be good for him. Obviously, when you're recovering from that Achilles injury, it's not a great thing, but we'll see what he's able to do with the opportunity that he's been given by Kyle Dubas, Mike Sullivan, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. 3 PTO signings, none of them Thomas Tatar. Had to throw that in at the end. But it'll be fun to watch what these 3 guys can do at Pittsburgh Penguins training camp. We are just about 3 weeks away from the start of that. 2 weeks away from the Rookie Challenge, so hockey is right around the corner. Keep it locked in here to Inside the Penguins on YouTube, on InsideThePenguins.com, where you get all of our writings, as well as anywhere you get your podcasts from. That's it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.